show you how the lane preferences feature works in our Winter 25 release. So in our lane preferences feature, we capture two unique concepts. I'll start first with the concept of a carrier lane preference. What this record captures in Revenova now is the lanes that a carrier prefers to run without having to actually create a truck posting to record actual capacity. And that's sort of the important distinction. It's the difference between actual capacity and simply the preferences or the tendencies of some of your carrier network. And the reason we built this in is because we want to help you meet carriers where they want to be. We want to help you further enhance that carrier relationship you have by delivering them loads that they've run before and that they like to run. So to create that record, say I'm on the phone with my friends at Liverpool Reds, and they say, hey, I tend to have guys on the Chicago to Denver lane. Well, I would simply record an effective date. Say I talked to Arnie Slot. The lane from Chicago to Denver is the lane that they told me they tend to like to move, and I will throw in their carrier service just so we know that this is the right division of Liverpool to reach out to when this lane comes up. I'll click Save, and now this record is captured in the system for use throughout the TMS. And where we use that is in the Find Carriers tab. So here's my load. On that Chicago to Denver lane, I'll crack open Find Carriers to try to understand who should I reach out to as I try to find capacity on this load. And what you'll now see is that under Preferred Carrier Services, I can tell that Liverpool tends to have a guy on this load, so I might as well reach out to them using the Get Quotes button or simply by logging a call. You might have seen that RFQ enhancement in our recent webinar. And I can ask these guys, hey, you mentioned you prefer to run this lane. Do you have anybody today? And that does two things. It reminds the carriers that you're listening and tells them, you have kept track of the lanes I like to run and you're offering them to me when they come up. And it also helps your users by giving you an additional section to open up if, for example, your in-network section and out-of-network section doesn't actually offer up any capacity for whatever reason. There's still yet another piece of data you can use to contact the right carriers. So that's our carrier lane preferences concept. And I mentioned there's sort of another side to this feature that's important to note, and that is that of a customer lane preference. Now on the customer side, what we're capturing with this record is the carrier that a customer likes to use on a given lane. So to create that record, instead of entering the carrier's TP, I will instead grab the customer's TP. Here on this same load I had before, you see my customer's Chicago Pizza. And for Chicago Pizza, again, on the effective and expiration dates that I've provided, on the Chicago to Denver lane, I know that they actually like to use MC Citizens. They've had success using these guys in the past. They really enjoyed their experience, so they want to be sure that we send them in whenever we have them. So I've saved this record, and I'll go back to the load here. I'll go back to Find Carriers, and I will refresh. You see I now have two preferred carrier services, one coming from the carrier from Liverpool that we were just talking about, and another coming from the customer. And this gives you, again, just another layer of data as you work to satisfy the customer and carrier on these loads as a broker. Your customer, seeing that you've sent in MC Citizens, is reminded that you've taken down that they liked working with Tom over at MC Citizens, you like the service that this carrier provides, and you continue to send them in because you're paying attention. But on the customer lane preferences, we take it one step further, and we use it in the Freight Quote Assistant and in the carrier quote list. So for example, if in a split model, I was the account owner for MC Citizens, and I just talked to them and they told me, oh yeah, we have somebody that can do that one for $800. I track, or the system tells the customer rep, this is a customer preference on this lane. And it also tells them in the carrier quote list as well, calling it out with this star button. So again, just further reminding the customer rep that, hey, you might have a couple of offers here, but this is one of the preferred customer or the customer lane preferences on this lane. Now, one more thing I want to mention about our lane preferences. We took an effort to try to make sure that this information is up to date and accurate. So we added effective and expiration dates, but we also added a default expiration date that can be refreshed as you continue to update the data in this system. In TMS Admin, we've added a lane preference default expiration, and this is the number of days that we treat a lane preference as valid. 10's probably short, more realistic. Maybe you want it to be a year, maybe you want it to be 6 months, maybe you want it to be 3 months, check back in every 90 days. So when I save this value, and I go to create a new lane preference, we're trying to make sure this data stays relevant, and we hope that by giving you the refresh expiration link and the default setting on the TMS admin page, that you're able to do that. Now, the last thing I'll show you on lane preferences is the fact that not only can your internal users create these records, but your customer portal and carrier portal users can as well. And that just saves the extra step of having to get on the phone or get on an email to capture carriers' lane preferences or customers' lane preferences. Instead, they can do it themselves on the portal. So I'll show you here on the customer portal. You'll see we have our new lane preferences tab and the lane preferences component. Now, just like that internal component, I can come in here and create a lane preference. Now, the difference being we lock this down to only the customer that you are logged in as. So, needless to say, our customers can only create carrier lane preferences or customer lane preferences for the TP that they apply to. And this works the same way on the carrier portal. Here I am on the customer portal, but this same component applies to the carrier portal and would lock this down to only the carrier that you're logged in as. Now, the rest of it looks very similar, so I'll skip through most of the details, but I'll show you the one I have created already for this demo that shows Chicago to Denver and our AAA Cooper carrier service. Now, when I go to the quote wizard to create a load, so we're getting our quotes now, pulling in again that same list, and as I scroll to the top, you'll see it all looks just about the same with the exception of our AAA Cooper carrier service, which calls out that this is a preferred carrier for this lane. So that covers our lane preferences. Again, what we're doing in this release is increasing the connection between CRM and TMS, allowing you to capture data on what would satisfy your customer, who the carriers they like to work with are, and data on your carrier network. What lanes do they like to run? Where do they want to be? It just helps you to better serve your customers and carriers as a broker. And when it comes to CRM and TMS for Revenova, that's really the ultimate goal.